Welcome to the 2026 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I am Neha Jadnani, and today we are addressing a reality every leader encounters, but very few fully equipped to handle. Our theme today is navigating tough conversations with clarity and compassion. To explore what it truly takes, we are joined by Dr. Anjana Vinod. Dr. Anjana Vinod, with over 32 years of experience, is a force of nature in the world of learning and development. A TEDx speaker, a certified coach, an EQ assessor, she blends science with storytelling, data with human connection, and strategy with soul. Whether she is mentoring professionals, coaching breast cancer warriors, or shaping leadership mindsets, she does it with boundless energy and an unwavering passion for impact. A three-time national awardee and Mrs. India International Classic 2023, she's inspired audiences across armed forces, PSUs, and global leadership forums. Beyond the training room, she finds joy in mandala art, storytelling, and cheering on her sports enthusiast daughter at HEC Paris. Dr. Anjana, thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Looking forward for our conversation today.
Fantastic. So, to begin with, Dr. Anjana, my first question to you is when conversations become difficult, what does leading with both clarity and compassion actually look like in practice?
Uh, you know what? Clarity is about addressing the problem. Compassion is about preserving that relationship. And honestly, leadership requires both these things. So there is this, beautiful concept which was developed by Judith Glacier. It's called conversational intelligence. So we have heard about IQ, we have heard about EQ. The new concept that is brewing in the corporate space is called CIQ, that is conversational intelligence. Now, that is all about your ability to use conversations to build trust, connection, and understanding. So, if I had to talk about leading with clarity and compassion, metaphorically, I'll say we all have seen. I mean, I'm sure you also must be having plants in the house, right? So, we all have plants in the house. We have seen gardeners do this. Now, if you see, there is a point of time where we actually use scissors and we kind of trim the plant at one point of time, correct? So we are pruning a plant, we are trimming. Now, what are we actually trimming? We are trimming what's unhealthy. So that's what clarity and intentionality means in a conversation also. So what am I actually cutting? But remember, we are not doing this to harm the plant. We are not doing this to damage, but we are doing all of this to help it grow. So clarity means making sure the issue is directly taken care of. Compassion is honoring that person while addressing that particular behavior. So, if I had to probably contextually in practice, I would say that maybe I'll use a sentence saying that, I really value your contribution. However, we need to discuss something that is impacting the overall organization, the team. And Neha, you know how fond I am of metaphors, and acronyms. Because we're talking about relationship, care is the beautiful word you can use for this, where it's about being clear about what you're talking about, having that utmost clarity on that. Also, we need to acknowledge the impact it's going to create. When I'm going to tell you something, where am I heading that conversation for? Am I bringing it with utmost clarity? And very, very important to respect the person. Remember, we are addressing the behavior, not the person. Exploring what could be done next, how can we take this ahead, will be one of the most easiest way, if I had to put it across, about making difficult conversations really meaningful and practical when you want to really address it. So very honestly, never forget that you cut parts of a tree just so that it can grow better.
Sure, sure. Beautifully put, starting with conversational intelligence, a very rare but very important in any difficult conversation. Example of a plant was great is to cutting what is unhealthy. The problem is not the person, it's the behavior that you need to fix. And of course, the CARE acronym, being clear, acknowledging, respect, and exploring what we can do about it. So thank you so much. My next question, Dr. Anjana, is what are the most common mistakes that leaders make during tough conversations and how can they course correct it in the moment?
The biggest mistake any leader makes is choosing comfort over courage. Leaders don't have to be perfect. They just have to be willing to recalibrate what they are thinking. So, if I had to put it across, I would say, like a AAA battery, there are three common errors they do: avoiding, they try and avoid those conversations; attacking, they attack the person instead of the behavior; and probably apologizing, over explaining instead of being direct. I explaining so much that you're like, Acha, theek hai, you know what? I mean, I'm really not sure where am I going wrong. So avoiding, attacking, over apologizing, excessively over explaining things, biggest mistakes that they do. So in tough conversation, if you had to look at conversational intelligence, when you consciously shift from power over to power with stance. Correct? When you focus on transparency, when you focus on respect, when you focus on curiosity, when you focus on what's the shared meaning, the future focus, you make people feel safe rather than threatened. And tough conversations are all about having that. So when I say power over, I mean, I dominate the conversation. I control the outcomes. I decide. So, you will hear people. So what it typically does for people is, if somebody is accusing you, you tend to be defensive. Correct? Uh, you fear compliance. There is lack of commitment. Okay. You will hear them say, oh, this is how it's going to be like. You have to do it this way. But when I say instead of power over, you move with a power with kind of an approach, where you hold the standards, but you invite partnership to solve the issue. Now, instead of accusing you, when I'm saying let's do it together, there's a lot of ownership. There's that psychological safety, not the fear of, not being able to do certain things. And of course, there is shared accountability. So instead of saying, that's how it's going to be, you better do it. If I say that, here's what we need to change. Can we figure it out how we can make this really happen? What is it that we can do it together? Suddenly you will see a lot of change. So it's not about going ahead and being right all the time, not being comfortable, but having that courage to go ahead, challenge, and consume that conversation or resume that conversation in a very structured manner. That way, I feel a lot will change in our leadership style and the way we work with leaders.
Sure, sure. So common mistakes being comfort over courage when leaders do that. There is avoidance, there is attacking, there is over apologizing. I especially like the power over against power with concept. So the idea is to giving people the opportunity to reflect upon things themselves, rather than implying, things on them and going in one direction. So it's creating that ecosystem for people to thrive. So thank you so much. My next question, Dr. Anjana, is how can leaders prepare themselves emotionally before entering a high stakes or sensitive discussion?
Um, one thing I always say, never enter a tough conversation with a loaded emotional gun. You know, empty that emotion, carry clarity instead. When leaders enter grounded, they lead the whole conversation in a grounded manner. So, probably the easiest thing one can do is use the pause ritual, which I very strongly use, where I have a very clear purpose defined. Why am I having this conversation? What is the outcome I'm looking out for? Am I having this conversation to demean someone and make them realize that you're not worthy enough? Or am I having this conversation because I genuinely want this person to understand there's much more potential in you? So, am I taking the conversation in a positive annotation and taking it further ahead from there? How many assumptions am I making? What story am I telling myself? Oh, he though will always be like this only. He will never understand only. I know my experience. 32 years I've been in the industry. What, Neha, you're telling me? 32 years, I know how things work. But probably situations have changed. Things have changed. The entire environment has changed. So am I still going with an assumption or am I looking at it differently? You is all about understanding their perspective. a lot changes when you put yourself in their shoes. A lot changes when you understand why they are saying what they are saying and from which perspective they are saying. There's this beautiful story about a mother and daughter. So mother was making something for the child and she was doing crochet work and everything. And she looks at it and says, "This is so beautiful. I'm sure I'm going to love this. This is so beautiful." And the child who's sitting down and playing with toys looks up and says, "Yeah, gee, mama, what jingle have you made? Horrible. What liked in this garden?" And she's like, "Oh no, this is so beautiful. What did you not like in it?" It's like, "Mama, anything you do, you feel it's fashion and it's very nice, no?" And the mother turned it and said, "What you didn't like in this?" He said, "Oh, I was seeing the threads from down." Was he wrong? No. Were you wrong? No. So I always say perspective, 90% of our conflict happens. It's only because I'm challenging your right versus what is my right. And both of us may be correct. So can I understand the other person's perspective by asking with curiosity rather than defending? Saying, that is not true. I'll tell you why I'm saying. No, that's very interesting. Just wanted to know from what perspective are you coming, or what is that school of thought? That's a very interesting school of thought. From where is it stemming from? When you enter into curiosity mode, you understand the perspectives better. Okay. Also, when I say what are the desired outcomes are you looking out for? Can I state that desired outcomes very clearly? Can I say, "Hey, you know what? At the end of this conversation, I genuinely want us to connect and understand this whole thing much better, explore it much better." Whatever is the outcome you're looking out for, can I define and can I state that outcome very clearly for myself rather than having it in a conversation? Can I tell myself what is it that I'm looking out for? Also, when I talk about emotional regulation, sometimes there's a lot of anxiety that goes in. Probably breathing or resetting myself from that perspective could be some good ways to, look at these things, because they will give me the kind of output that I'm genuinely looking out for, and that could mean so much more. So managing oneself becomes that much easier when you just look at it from a holistic perspective, correct? When you regulate, when you reframe, when you redirect yourself mentally, a lot changes. When I say regulate, it's your emotions. When I say reframe, the conversations that you're going to have. When I redirect towards the outcome, it's not about putting somebody down, but it's about going ahead and having that conversation from a perspective that we need good results. And that's what works for both of us.
Sure, sure. Clearly, very important to be grounded before you get into any conversation, as you rightly
Yes.
said. It's keeping the emotions aside, I think makes it much more easier to express, as well as the chances of it being perceived will not have any baggage for the other person as well. Also, the pause acronym, purpose being defined, do not assume, understanding of perspectives, stating the desired outcome, and last but not the least, the emotional regulation, which is very, very important. My next question, Dr. Anjana, is in situation where message may be uncomfortable, how do you ensure empathy doesn't dilute with clarity or accountability?
So remember, we need to understand what is empathy. Empathy is not softness. It's actually a strength, because it's all about awareness, correct? Many leaders confuse empathy with lowering standards. Now, that's a myth. Empathy, it's about validating those feelings. Clarity, see, empathy will validate your feelings. Clarity will protect your performance. Accountability, will probably protect the entire culture altogether. And strong leaders will need all these three inputs. So when we talk about conversational intelligence, it basically teaches us transparency, because that's where the trust gets built faster than
Right.
politeness. I may be polite with you, but you may not trust me. But if I'm very transparent and candid with you, you will trust me more, correct? So if I had to look at it, how do I make sure that empathy is not diluting the whole thing? You need to be firm. And when I say firm, put the facts first, correct? What is the impact? Can I explain that very clearly? Can I, when we talk about responsibilities, can I clarify that very clearly? Uh, can I mutually agree on the next steps? Correct. I understand this is difficult, and the expectation still stands there. So we need to work our way out with this. And remember, if you look at the dictionary definition of empathy, it says that uh, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I always say this, Anjana has a different definition. It says putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, it's not a full stop, it's a comma. First, remove your shoes. Because only then can I really understand your perspective. You know, imagine walking on a road and you have a small pebble that enters your shoes. You walk ahead and you meet me, and I'm like, Are Neha, thank God you came. Can you please take this crate of water and go to the third floor? Now, probably that crate of water is just weighing half a kg. But for Neha, with that pebble in the foot, it is beyond that. It is no longer half a kg. Maybe it's weighing a kg or maybe even two for her because it's so heavy because that is hurting her. But it's not my pain that you're carrying. You're not even understanding my perspective. I'm only giving you so much. You are adding so much of your own to this whole thing. So, empathy, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, but first remove yours so that you really understand where they're coming from. And then the dilution of that whole thing will absolutely go.
Sure, sure. So to prevent every conversation with any dilution, here are some of the things I'll reiterate for the audiences, which is being firm, putting the facts first, explaining the impact, clarifying the responsibility, and then there is expectations which needs to be managed. And of course, beautiful definition about empathy from you. So this brings us to the last question, Dr. Anjana, which is what are a few practical frameworks or habits that leaders can adopt to handle tough conversations more confidently and consistently?
So, I believe tough conversations are like leadership muscle. It can only get strengthened with a structure. So, if I want to have a tough conversation, if I want to have a challenging conversation, if I want to put you into a situation where I know that this could lead to an awkward situation, there are zillions of framework available in the market. You could use a SBI framework, which we talk about, situation, behavior, and impact. Correct? It keeps the feedback very factual and very neutral because you are telling what is the situation, what was the behavior that you displayed, and what is the impact it created. I personally feel a 24-hour rule is brilliant. If something is bothering you, address it within 24 hours because after 24 hours, it starts building resentments. There's no point in regretting later. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have had this conversation. 24 hours should be your cap. Or it could be the next conversation mindset. Instead of asking yourself, how do I win this? What if you just say, how can I leave this relationship stronger even after having that conversation? Correct. So, difficult conversation, metaphorically, I would say they are like bridges. You avoid them, the gap will become bigger. But you cross them over and the connection deepens. So, the best way, go ahead, build that connection, have that conversation so that you could take it to the next level. Never drop it at something. It's not easy to have difficult conversation, but believe me, once you have that tough conversation, people trust and believe in you because you're being honest and candid with them. You're telling them what fact it is, and that's what relationships built on. Many successful leaders are the ones who have actually had these candid conversations, factual conversation with their people, and those are the mentors that even leaders remember all their life.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. So there is addressing a conversation within 24 hours to, avoid the resentment. There is how can I leave this conversation, where the relationship is still intact. And also, I loved how you said leadership muscle gets strengthened with a structure. So before getting into any conversation, it becomes really crucial. So thank you so much, Dr. Anjana. This brings us to the end
Thank
of
you.
this masterclass. Thank you for so thoughtfully sharing your perspectives. I think you have reinforced an essential fact today, which is tough conversations don't weaken the leadership; it actually defines it. And if it is being handled by clarity and compassion, those can actually lead to moments of trust, growth, and even lasting impact. So, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you so much. And I always say, remember, the gardener is not cutting those, unhealthy plants for the plant to be damaged, only to help it grow better.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. So, thank you
Thank you
so
so
much
much.
for sharing your
Thank you so
perspective.
much.